So now they come back down here to the cruet table. The server number 1 puts the stopper back on the wine cruet, and he takes the finger towel in his hands and holds it between his thumb and index finger each corner. So he's holding that. The second server, who had the water, will take the water in his right hand by the handle so he can pour it, and he will pick up the bowl with the left hand. So now he has the bowl and the water cruet. The first server has the finger towel. They will go back, go up the steps, and wait there for the priest. When the priest comes over, they will bow to him, a bow number 2. He holds his thumbs and index fingers over the bowl. They pour the acolyte number 2 with the water, pours the water over his fingers. Not a huge amount, you don't want it to gush out, but not just a couple drops either. You pour slow and steady, and he will just simply lift up his fingers to indicate when you stop. And then the server with the finger towel should bring it up close, so as soon as his fingers are washed, he can take the finger towel and then dry his fingers. And then he will return the cruet towel to server number 1 and the finger towel. And what we normally have the server do is, as soon as he takes the towel, he will fold his hands. And then when the priest is going to return it, you can lift up your thumbs. He will drape the towel over your folded hands, and then you put your thumbs on top of the towel and just hold it that way. And then bow number 2 and go back to the cruet table. And there's one thing I forgot to mention, and that is the first time when you both have the cruets, when he takes the cruet from you, as soon as he takes a cruet, you fold your hands. And then he's about to give it back, then you reach out your hand, put your left hand back on your breast, reach out your right hand, take it, and kiss it. But when he takes it, don't stand there with your hand hanging in the air. You will fold your hands and then receive it back. All right, so now the servers go back to the cruet table, put their things away, put the stopper back on the water cruet and so forth, and server number 1, who had the wine, and then he had the finger towel, he will pick up the bell from the cruet table. Now there are some churches that will maybe leave the bell on the step. We have the custom here, the bell is kept on the cruet table. But what you have to be careful about is when you carry the bell, not to be jingling the bell, making noise with the bell, to hold it, to carry it very steady so that it's not ringing as you go back to your place. So server number 1 has the bell, they both come back, so now they're here. This would be number 2 over here, number 1 here, and he's holding the bell in his right hand. They genuflect, then they turn to the sides, go to their places, and kneel on the lower step. So now the server will just set the bell in front of him on the second step right in front of him. So you have the 2 servers kneeling here, the bells are there, the priest will finish his prayer, then he will turn around and say the Orate Fratres. So he says Orate Fratres, and then he continues the turn all the way around, facing back towards the Blessed Sacrament, and finishes the prayer. Some priests will indicate when they finish the prayer, because after the first 2 words, Orate Fratres, it's said silently. So some priests will raise their voice a little bit for the last couple of words, or they will just simply put their hands on the altar. And if they do neither of those, you just have to estimate when the priest finishes the prayer, then you say your Suscipiat. So you don't want to begin the Suscipiat until he has turned completely around and either finished the prayer or just about. When you determine that he finishes the prayer, then the servers in their place will bow for the Suscipiat, a bow number 2, and they say that prayer, the Suscipiat. Then the priest says the secret prayers, and he begins the preface. At the end of the preface, there's the Sanctus. So the servers will bow for the Sanctus, and I think it says a bow number 3 for the Sanctus. Let's see what it says here. Yeah, bow number 3. The first acolyte rings the bell 3 times at the Sanctus. The servers bow number 3. At the end of the ringing the bells, they kneel erect and make the sign of the cross as the priest is saying the second part of the Sanctus, Benedictus qui venit in nomine Domini. They make the sign of the cross. Now they're kneeling there. They have their hands folded, and you have to be attentive because the server on the right, acolyte number 1, has to ring the bell when the priest puts his folded hands over the host and chalice. So he's standing there with his hands held in this manner, and then when he puts them together and puts them over the chalice, the server rings the bell. That's called the Hakijitor prayer. And what sometimes happens, because there's nothing going on and it's silent for a few minutes, sometimes the server daydreams and forgets to watch to ring that bell. That bell is important because it notifies the people that the consecration is about to happen. And it is also the signal for the servers to get up and proceed up to the top for the consecration. Now this is what they're going to do. Let me redraw my steps here. So I have 1, 2, 3 steps. The top step is the platform. These two servers right here will stand. They will come towards one another, but they don't need to genuflect because the Blessed Sacrament is not on the altar yet. It's before the consecration. So they will simply go up and kneel on each side of the priest. Now, some altars, the platform may be so narrow, not very deep, they may have to kneel a step down. But typically we kneel right up on the top platform. You don't stand onto the top, by the way. You go up, you're standing on one step down from the top, and you kneel onto the top. Now, leave a space in between you, because the priest needs to genuflect. And if you don't leave a space, he's going to kick your head when he genuflects, and you probably don't want that to happen. So you leave a space in between you. So notice that servers will go up, coming together, not completely together, because they're going to leave that space. They're kneeling on the platform, and they kneel there. This server took the bell with him, and hopefully it didn't jingle at all. He held the bell very steady. That's something you can practice, holding the bell, walking with the bell so it doesn't ring. So now you're kneeling there. The priest bows over, and he says the words of consecration. When he genuflects, you bow, a bow number 3, and you ring the bell. The server on the right rings the bell gently. You don't have to ring it hard. You don't want to shake your arm. You just want to wiggle your wrist, turn your wrist, and let the bell do the work. And it's a beautiful sound if you just ring the bell gently, musically. It's a very pleasant sound. You don't want to shake it. You don't want to have a shaking sound to the bell. So the servers bow when the priest genuflects, and then as he elevates the sacred host, they will lift up his chasuble on each side. They should be, I'll draw here the back of a Roman-style chasuble, and you want to have the servers both holding it at the same place, because if one is holding it higher up and the other is holding it lower, then from the people's vantage point, it's not even. So you want it to be symmetrical, you want it to be even, and when the servers lift it up, it's only a few inches. They don't lift it up very high. So if I'm looking at the priest, you might say from the side, I see here's the priest's head, and here's his chasuble coming down, and when the server's elevated, it's just a little bit on the elevation, lifting up the chasuble for the elevation. A few inches. All right, after that, the priest brings the host down, sets the host back down on the corporal, and then he genuflects. When he genuflects, the servers bow, again, bow number 3. Then he takes the chalice, says the words of consecration, which take longer than for the host. He genuflects, bell is rung again, he elevates the chalice, they hold up the chasuble, the bell is rung again, and then the genuflection afterwards. And the servers bow, and the bell is rung. So you have 6 rings of the bell. You have each genuflection, which is before and after the elevation of the host and the chalice, and then you have the elevation itself. So 3 rings of the bell for the consecration of the host, and 3 for the chalice. After the consecration of the chalice and the final genuflection, the servers bow, bow number 3, a deep bow. They will come up, kneel erect, and then they will stand. Now, when they stand, they're standing on this step again. They never step up onto the platform. They stand up, they come down to the middle, they just turn inward, come down, then turn straight, facing the altar, genuflect together, and then proceed to the sides, and now they kneel at their normal places. So after the consecration, they're back kneeling where they normally are on the sides of the lowest step. Now again, they fold their hands and they just kneel there right up until really the time for communion. There's a prayer the priest says called the Nobis Quoque Peccatoribus. They do not strike their breasts for that prayer. He comes to the end of the canon. He says, Per omnia saecula saeculorum. They recite Amen. Then he recites the Our Father, Pater Noster. At the end of it, they say, Sed libera nos a malo. And then he says a prayer called the Libera Nos, and he signs himself with the paten. But it's silent, so the servers do not sign themselves. So let me review this rule one more time. You make the sign of the cross whenever the priest does so, if he's praying out loud. But you don't do it during the canon because his voice is silent. You don't do it during the prayer after the Pater Noster when he signs himself with the paten because the prayer is silent. So you conform yourself to the priest. Bows of the head, signs of the cross when he is praying out loud. The only exceptions to that would be when he says his own confiteor at the foot of the altar, when he strikes his breast at the Nobis Quoque Peccatoribus, which really isn't out loud, it's slightly an elevated voice, but you just remain hands folded, and when the priest says Domini non sum dignus before his communion. He's saying Domini non sum dignus, striking his breast. You do not bow, the priest does, and you do not strike your breast because it's for his communion, not your communion. But we'll come to that in a minute. So you're kneeling there. We have the Pater Noster, then we have the fraction of the host, and you have the responses, Et cum spiritu tuo, per omnia saecula saeculorum, etc. Then the priest says the Agnus Dei. During the Agnus Dei, you will bow, a bow number 2, and you come up after the Agnus Dei, and you strike your breast, the Agnus Dei, miserere nobis, dona nobis pacem. Then you kneel erect again. He says 3 prayers before communion. Then he says the Domini non sum dignus. The server on the right rings the bell 3 times at each Domini non sum dignus. But you do not strike your breasts, and you do not bow, because it's not your communion. It's for the priest's communion. Then when he receives the host, then you'll bow. And that's bow number 3. And this reception of the host and then the consuming the contents of the chalice symbolizes the death of our Lord on the cross. So there's a bow number 3 according to the book that we follow. Some books don't have that, but ours does.